The interactions and engagement when it comes to gaming have increased manifold. What will it take for the gaming industry to be an attractive avenue for brands with the propensity to invest in marketing and advertising? Will it be through on-ground activations during esports championships, or will it be through in-game advertisements? Can engagement with games rake in real-time actionable data for the brands to act upon? Marketers' perspective on gaming, a medium that is garnering millions of eyeballs. Let's get the answers. Up next is a panel discussion on gaming brands' perspective. I would like to invite Devesh Gupta, Content Lead, Product and Community, etbrandequity.com, to moderate the discussion. Welcome, Devesh. Over to you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for this introduction. With over 300 million gamers and revenue expected to touch around $3.9 billion by 2025, gaming has emerged as a big phenomenon in the Indian market. And this has caught the attention of brands. So now let us understand from some of the leading marketers on how they are leveraging gaming platforms to connect with their audiences. Welcome, Vanda, and welcome, Shreya. My first question is to both of you. Okay. How are you, what has been your experience with reaching out to audiences, via gaming? Vanda, let's start with you first.
Gaming for us is important. It's increasingly become a big feature for us, which actually drives a lot of monetization. A little bit about FreshToHome. FreshToHome is the world's largest backward integrated meat and seafood company with presence in 180 cities in India and the Middle East. And as you know, meat and seafood is a very frequently purchased item in the household. So we use gamification to see how we can increase the frequency of purchase. And therefore, for us, a very important metric is DAU. And we actually track this very, very strongly. So we introduce a plethora of games on our app to be able to get consumers to transact far more frequently. So yes, it is a critical pillar for us because it builds frequency and it drives revenue.
Shreya, on your end, what has been your experience with the gaming and connecting with the audiences?
Sure. So I think before I start, two things to set a bit of context on, how PUMA sees this space. I think one, gaming is no longer that other thing that you do, right? It's very much now looked at as a mainstream sport. Gamers are looked at as athletes. And it makes perfect sense then for a sports brand really to be in this space, right? Because that is our bread and butter. That is the space that we exist in. So for us, I think gaming is very much exactly how we would look at any other sport today, right? I think the second thing is, in today's day and age, asking somebody if they are a gamer is like asking somebody whether they watch Netflix or OTT, right? It's, almost everybody plays games in some shape or form, right? And if I look at my own data, about 70% of my audience are very, very avid gamers, right? So it's a no-brainer for us to exist in this space. Even by virtue of doing nothing, we are talking to an audience that are gamers, right? So in that sense, not investing or not engaging in the gaming space is not even an option today, right? You are doing it irrespective. So I think for us, it's really then about if we already have such a large audience that are gamers, and gaming is irrespective considered a sport today, right? And we are in the business of sports. It's sort of, obvious that we would exist there in any case, right? And the way that we really look at this space is not, very hardcore metrics like sales or revenue generation or any of that. I think this is for us an additional channel of engagement. It's about creating value for gamers in ways that we see relevant to them. That's really the goal. It's more about long-term mind share, more about engagement than it really is about short-term conversion.
So interesting, You mentioned it like, it's not about engagement, but it's all about, long-term mindshare that you want to build through gaming. So how are you investing, into gaming with 70% of your audiences, anyways playing games? So how are you, investing into gaming?
Sure. So there are, a lot of ways to really engage with this audience. A couple of them which we have done is, we currently globally sponsor about 5 esports teams. Right. We recently signed Genji, which is like a Korean team. We also have a clothing line with Cloud9 that we do, right? We have a full PUMA gaming category where we produce, clothing and apparel, footwear, all of that, right? I think we wanted to go even a bit further, right? Because it's not just about what clothes they wear. Like I said, for us, we also look at it as what value we can add to these users, right? So we've actually created a gaming chair that is basically designed to ensure that the way a player plays a game, right, it helps support and mimic his movements, right? So typically as a player, you would occasionally lean forward, you would lean backwards while you're in the midst of the game, right? So we've actually designed a chair that helps mimic those movements and makes those movements easy and faster, right? So, from the product side, from the sponsorship side, in India, we actually partnered with Dream 11 last year to, launch a limited exclusive line for them. So, there are multiple ways to do this, honestly. We've even done things like, in-game, partnerships. So, for example, when we launched the Neymar Junior collection, we actually partnered with Fortnite, right? So we created, a Neymar Junior avatar, and you could win skins. There was a go crazy arena where you could play. There was actually a face off. We'd created a sort of tournament. So there are a lot of things that you can do really today in this space, and it's really, I think, for brands to figure out their permutation combination of what works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like globally, a lot of brands, like big, small, medium-sized brands, they're all investing into gaming, be it the Coca-Colas of the world, the Wendy's of the world, Puma, Nike, Adidas, everyone is doing that. Coming to you, Vanda, on this, I believe your investments into gaming, are more on the sides of gamification. Okay, how you are, connecting with your audiences. So, can you elaborate a little more on that?
So taking a little bit from what Shreya said is, gaming also, while it gets consumers to your platform and it interacts with them, it also, builds that, I would say it builds equity over time, because you are top of mind, they are coming to you. So we see both short-term and also a medium-term build of this. So therefore, it's really important about, while it is gamification is what we see, it's really important to see that the games also are cool, they are nice, and people really come and seek them. So with respect to our kind of business, and we use gamification in a big way, we break it down into 3 buckets. The first one is whenever there is a topical event, for example, a World Cup or there is IPL, right? We actually design and create games during that period of time. Okay. And that also gives us a good enough window, in terms of number of weeks where people can come and play. And we have a lot of streak-based games. So it's a lot of addiction, it's a lot of stickiness, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of FOMO which people actually have. And what we do is we track this year on year to see how it performs. And then we also build on features to be able to get better results, because metrics are very, very important for us. So over the last 3 years, I think it's quite a feat that we've been able to get a fair amount of our active base coming and playing these games every day, when it is a World Cup, a FIFA World Cup, or an IPL. And we have really interesting goodies which we actually give out. Relevant, for example, there are barbecue sets, there are lots of vouchers, etc. And every streak also gives you that bit of wallet and cash, which allows you to come back and redeem it. The second part is these everyday games, right? So in terms of gamification, you see big platforms, for example, Amazon, Myntra, etc. Even Google Pay, they have a lot of these interesting things which people pay and they play and they keep on coming to it. So we have a lot of Wheel of Fortunes. We have a lot of Catch the Chicken games, which our developers create, which are really fun. And post-pandemic, right? I mean, so during the pandemic, people actually, there's a huge awareness and people have actually been really open to playing games. So these short format, very interesting, quick win games actually do really well for our platform. The third bucket is something which is really interesting, which is while it is a sale, it is also a FOMO-driven sale. And a lot of brands, for example, Cred also do this. They have limited editions at a particular time, which they give crazy offers and deals. And it's literally like the faster finger first. Okay. So we do this at frequent intervals and a lot of traction because our consumers also, our TG is, they're early adopters, convenience seekers in metros, and they're younger audiences. Right. So these three formats do really well in gaining a lot of their attention. And we have a good backend team, developers, etc., who actually come up with these games, and a very strong analytics and CRM team, which needs to drive this.
So how are you measuring the metrics? Because you mentioned that, metrics are a very important point, a very important aspect of the entire gamification drive that you have, for your audiences, especially the younger audiences. So what are those metrics and how do you calculate that?
Okay, the first ones are the hard metrics, which we actually see, which are through the funnel, right? So we see the increase in sessions, we see the increase in the number of transacting users, we measure DAUs. So all these are hard-coded metrics which we actually see. In the first format, we see year on year how we are faring. In the other games which we introduce on a regular basis, we do a pilot test, we do A/B testing, and then we see how it works, and then we roll it out. We see monetization also in terms of the percentage of these users who also make a transaction, what is their AOV. And we also see a percentage of the base, right? Active base, inactive base, which comes and actually transacts. So these are the metrics which we see. We also see slightly mid to long-term metrics where we actually check imagery statements in our brand track. So while you see awareness, consideration, the entire funnel is fairly strong. But in terms of imagery statements, right, we introduce things like FreshToHome is a cool brand. FreshToHome has interesting games. So this we actually track on a month-on-month basis to see how we are actually faring.
Shreya, in your case, where you are working towards building long-term consideration for your brand, through gaming, what are the kind of metrics that you rely on?
Sure. So I think, depending on what is the route that you take, right, the metrics could vary. So if you're doing something like, say, an in-game product launch, right, like we did for Neymar, then really that's more about talkability than anything else, right? So how many people are talking about it, how many people are sharing their experiences, how many people are engaging in the platform, right? It's about, like they say, the hype that is being created by something like this, right? Versus if you were to, of course, create a very specialized collection like a Cloud9, for example, or a Dream 11 collection. I think there is also a bit of customer acquisition because you're doing this, of course, to be relevant to your base, but also to find like-minded consumers to come and join the PUMA family through this, right? You're being relevant to a cohort that has a very niche specific interest. So, depending on really what is the route taken by the brand, your metrics could vary.
Okay. And as this phenomena grows, where more and more brands are investing into gaming, so how do you see the budgets increasing towards investing in the gaming? In last few years, how has how has PUMA, let's say, increased their budgets towards gaming?
Sure. So I think, the pandemic has really, I think, shifted a mindset in terms of budgets, right? Because suddenly everybody was sitting at home and a large portion of time was being spent on playing games, right? And it's sort of, I think, even brands that were not considering this space of gaming and esports as a very important space to invest in, started considering it just by virtue of the fact that this was one of those things that people were actually doing a lot, right? And gaming, by like, unlike a lot of other digital forms of entertainment, is actually quite social, right? Because largely you'll play against other people, right? So in that sense, I think people were also using it as a way to engage with others while they were at home, and it made it even more relevant than as a platform for advertisers to advertise. So I think specifically post-pandemic, I've seen a lot of brands really shift their focus and take gaming as a very serious space to, invest in. I think, and irrespective of which brand you are, right? If you are a brand with that is premium and has higher price points, there are enough options for you. If you are a brand that specifically wants to reach out to tier 2 or tier 3, there are enough options for you today. So I think it's really a space that's so omnipresent that irrespective of who you are as a brand, there are enough opportunities for you to really invest in a cohort that is relevant to you, right? And the interesting thing about gaming is you will realize that the engagement and the attention spans are much higher, right? Which is maybe not the case for social media today, because you are spending hours and hours really intensely playing a game. So if you're actually able to advertise in a way that instead of taking away from that experience, you are actually integrating with that experience, right? It guarantees you a very high undisturbed attention span from the user, and that's something that we're all struggling with today, right? In the world of social media and 14-second reels and all of that, I think to be able to have a digital platform where you can deeply engage with a consumer is obviously something that everybody wants. So in that sense, I think, even if it already hasn't, in the near future, you will see that gaming and gaming platforms and esports becomes a very regular part of somebody's marketing mix, right? It's like when social media came and people suddenly started shifting from offline to a more digital mindset of advertising. And now it's like a no-brainer, right? There's nobody who says we don't advertise on social media, we don't do digital advertising, right? So I really see, gaming also becoming one of those no-brainer platforms or, no-brainer means of engaging with your audience, because it's just so omnipresent that you can't not engage in some shape or form.
Very interesting points. A couple of things were, the higher engagement and the undisturbed attention that it gets, and, how you see the future of gaming becoming, it's just like, advertising on social media. Like everybody advertises on social media today, goes for performance marketing. Gaming will be something, where everybody will go forward. Vanda, do you concur with Shreya's views?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean to say, as she rightly said, that the pandemic also has accelerated the adoption and the stickiness of gaming. So right now, it's manifesting across multiple formats, multiple types, right? Short format games, longer format, I mean to say, association with sports. This entire thing of gaming, whether you're physically doing it or you're doing it on your app or your phone, is really become very, very widespread. And I think for brands, especially for us, this is a huge area of opportunity, because it works in multiple ways. As I said, it's for transaction. It's also for stickiness, right? If I have gamification on my app and in a very cluttered market, there has to be something which a person comes back to my app to be able to buy. And in some ways, we've seen studies, right? Dipsticks, where consumers actually prefer us over competition because they say, yes, it's an interesting app and I may get some reward. And who would have thought it happens for meat and seafood? But yes, it actually does. So stickiness is there. And also the coolness, right? I mean, so who doesn't want to have a lovable brand? And especially in our place of what we do, our area of businesses. So adding these features to it just makes it a nicer, cooler, everyday accessible, brand. So all these things actually help manifold. And I think we've also started investing considerably in different spheres. One is, for example, the development which actually needs to take place. The second one is the promotion, right? You have to tell people you have you have a game on your app. So how do you reach out to digital channels, CRM channels to be able to get people to come to the app and want to play? I think that's a huge aspect, and considerable amount of spends happen in that also digitally and also through CRM channels. And what we've seen over time, we've actually been able to crack it very interestingly. You have to tell them there's an interesting game. So we've seen our open rates for PNs, our clicks, our open rates for emailers, right? When we do funky cool ones saying that there is a game there and you've got numerous prizes to be won, has increased over time. So we're getting better at it. And I think the third bucket is also incentivization. They come for a reason. You have to give them, be it a big ticket, small ticket. And it's just like what we used to do, from times immemorial, right? When you bought a biscuit pack and used to scratch it and used to get some coupon, some code, right? Who doesn't like an incentive? So the more you have incentives and interesting incentives, right, it leads to the success of your game, and it works in the entire scheme of things.
So what are these, how much has your investment grown into gaming, let's say post-pandemic? Because, I believe gaming as a phenomenon has gained, a huge fillip post-pandemic, because when people were forced to sit inside their homes, they sampled a lot of games, and online games became a rage. After that, everybody jumped onto that platform initially to kill time, and then they were, they adopted it because they started liking it. So, how has your investments towards, these gaming increased in last 2-3 years?
It has increased considerably, but see, that being said, right, it is a very technical. It's a very you need to have a game which people want to play, right? Everyone wants interesting games, but
Correct.
ultimately you see on the App Store or Play Store, I mean to say, there are these top 4, 5, 6 games which people keep on playing, right? There is a reason, there are brains behind it. So I think we made considerable investments in the backend team, having developers who think about it. We've allocated considerable budgets. I would say we've increased the budgets by around 2x in terms of promoting these games and getting people to the app. And also in terms of incentives, I think we have doubled our investments in all of this. But I think more so, it's also the importance of gaming and how the entire organization works. So we've had we built our data team to be able to read insights and come up with better features to help the product team to come up with better features. We've also, because fulfillment needs to happen, right? And therefore, we've also worked very strongly with our delivery teams also to ensure, products also reach the consumer. So I think as a mindset in this organization, because gaming is becoming really, really important, we've been able to weave all the functions together to be able to come through to make it a success.
Interesting. Now, while we have talked about, engagement, stickiness and the investments that have gone into gaming, by brands, let us talk about the audiences, that we are able to cater through gaming, and the kind of audiences which are coming, to brands, to these platforms, for gaming. So gaming has always been seen as a very young phenomenon. I mean, mostly the younger audiences which are, coming to the gaming platforms. So is it more like currently now a metro phenomenon, or has it gone beyond the metros? Shreya, let's start with you, on this first.
So, honestly, it's everywhere, right? You have not just Gen Z, you have a very, very large chunk of millennials who spend a considerable amount of their time playing. So it's not limited to a very, very young age group. You also have a lot of platforms like, say an MPL or a Dream 11, where it's not just a metro phenomenon, right? A large chunk of the audience actually comes from tier 2, tier 3, right? And it's a big hook for them because a platform like MPL, for example, is play and earn, right? So there are people from tier 2, tier 3 who actually spend a considerable amount of time on the platform playing and improving their skills so they can earn more, right? So honestly, like I said, gaming is kind of omnipresent now. I mean, even if you were to consider something as simple as a Candy Crush, right? It's actually the older generation that plays a very, very, significant portion of that audience group. It's not necessarily the younger generation. So, I mean, irrespective of what your game is and who your audience is, like I said, there's something for everyone. You will find some overlap with your cohort or who you want to talk to in the gaming space.
And is this, is there a skew towards male gamers, or is it balanced, between male and female?
Now again, see, depends on the game, right? So, a Candy Crush, from whatever data I've seen, is actually largely female, right? But there are, of course, a lot of platforms that are male driven. The interesting phenomena that I do see is that, unlike traditional sports, where either you will have a heavily male dominated game, or you have men and women playing separately. I think with esports, that's not the case, right? So I've come across a lot of esports teams with very much an equal split of men and women playing those games, right? So in that sense, I think it's actually quite equitable and will continue to become more and more equitable as time goes on and gaming, like I said, becomes even more and more pervasive. And especially, now there is significant amount of money to be earned as a gamer, which maybe was not the case 5-10 years ago. And that in itself makes it a very lucrative and interesting space for both men and women to exist in.
Vanda, what's your thought on the audiences, that are coming on your platform? Is it mostly your consumers?
Yeah, it's mostly our consumers only. I don't think we are that big to be able to attract non-consumers right now. But yes, it is our consumers, and we reach out to our existing base also, because that's the easiest to actually get conversions from. See, there are different kinds of games. For example, if you have Rummy, or if you have, those kind of games where you see more equitable or more female oriented. But the others, I think gaming is essentially a male dominated space. That being said, for us, it is, you have people playing different kinds of games. So the kinds of game which we have also are not, short-term, very quickly won, incentive-based ones. So what we see is there is an equal split of male and female, the audiences who actually play it. Given that on our app, we see equal split of male and female buying. Even when a male buys, it's typically when the female tells him what she's going to cook for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and therefore buy that chicken or mutton, etc. So there's always women at the background telling him what to do. But yes, it's an equal split of male and female.
Great. So before I close the session, just wanted to understand your final thoughts on how do you see brands investing into the gaming. Will the investments continue to build on? Shreya, let's begin with you on this.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think this is a space, like I said, will become a undeniable part of every brand's marketing mix in some form or the other.
Great. And Vanda?
I think increasing amounts will be deployed to make gaming work for brands. That being said, it's not an easy task. It requires a lot of investments, back end and front end. And I think brands are increasingly seeing this as a good ROI medium and, a long-term lever to actually drive stickiness and monetization. So I feel brands with deeper pockets will do a better job. And the others should, do small format, interesting things which are very relevant to their brand.
Right.
Rather than really aping the big brands who are brands out there. So for example, we do things like catch the chicken or where is the drumstick, because those kind of interesting things also are synergistic to your line of business. In addition, they have good interest levels. So I think brands need to play it smartly also to be able to make this work for them.
Yeah, and I think it depends also, a lot on the objectives that each brand has. If you have a wider objective of creating awareness, across the geographies, and across the demography, then it becomes, predominant to go with an esports team, or, be the jersey partner. And there are a variety of other formats. In your case, if you're only looking at your consumers, very specifically, the audiences that consume non-vegetarian. So it's easier, to go with the gamification part where, you can directly or where you can indirectly, kind of induce the message, incentivize them and, connect with them and engage with them. True. Great. Thank you, Vanda. Thank you, Shreya, for joining on this session. It was really lovely interacting with you. And, some of the insights that I got around, audiences, the kind of investments which are going in. And like Shreya mentioned that, gaming is omnipresent and gaming will be omnipresent and the investments on it will continue. And it's going to be a no-brainer for every brand to be present on a gaming platform and use gamification as a technique to connect with their audiences. Thank you very much for sharing those insights. Lovely interacting with you, ladies.
Thank you, everyone, for bringing out the best points from the discussion. Indeed, a very deep and insightful session. Now we'll proceed to the next session.